Welcome to the African Sports Link, and greetings to all of you that have tuned in. This new series sets out to shed light on professional African sports, particularly where we've been in the past and where we're going in the future. On that note, it's only right that I begin with my own country, Zaire, or the Leopards as they were and still are nicknamed. In 1974, Zaire was the first Sub-Saharan African team to reach the World Cup finals. But this amazing story is one of both wonder and woe. Today known as the Democratic Republic of Congo, Zaire qualified for the finals, having won the African Cup of Nations earlier that year. They were seen as potentially dangerous and tricky opponents, but unfortunately lost all 3 games. For those who don't know much about football, 99 countries entered the tournament, but only 16 made it to the finals. How did Zaire get to the finals in the first place? To answer how Zaire qualified for the World Cup, we have to examine how football began and developed in Zaire. Zaire, or the Democratic Republic of Congo, as it is now known, was once a Belgian colony, created in the early 1900s until 1960. The Belgians were diabolical colonizers, committing some of the worst acts known to man. Later, they introduced football into the Zairean army, and this was perhaps the only form of humanity shown by the Belgians to the Congolese people. From the early 1920s onward, football flourished in the Congo, with many Congolese football leagues emerging. Unfortunately, following Congolese independence in 1960, the country descended into warfare, only ended in 1965 when General, or locally known as Marshal Mobutu, seized power with the help of Western support. From 1960 to 1965, attempts were made to continue the beautiful game in Congo, but this proved difficult. Yet by 1968, Congo had won the African Cup of Nations. What an achievement. But what changed is probably the next logical question. Well, upon coming to power in 1965, Mobutu began to heavily invest in football and made sure everybody knew it, even renaming football stadiums after himself. Mobutu was willing to pay handsomely for such recognition, using state funds to finance the Congolese football team. In 1966, Mobutu proudly declared, "Sport is just as important as the economy," and he certainly treated Congolese soccer as an economic investment, providing large funds for the repatriation of Congolese footballers playing in Belgium. Archived documents from the Congolese Football Association show that Mobutu in fact was the driving force behind this repatriation, the cost of which was high. In 1967, the Congolese Football Association agreed to pay over 950,000 Belgian francs for the return of 4 Congolese players applying their trade in Belgium. These players greatly enhanced the quality of the emerging nation, yet the investment did not stop there. We'll get back to that in just a moment, but firstly, I'd like to point out that that figure of 950,000 Belgian francs amounts to approximately 4.5 million euros today in 2021. I wonder how much would be enough of an incentive for Congolese players who aspire to play for European national teams today. But anyway, Luckily, we have Yannick Bolasie, who began his international career for the Democratic Republic of Congo in 2013 with 44 appearances and 9 goals to date. Similarly, Trésor Lomana Lualua is another Congolese player who made it to the highest level but also played for the Leopards. He was first named for the Congolese national team in January 2002. Before I go back to how football became so popular in Congo, I have to say thank you to Lualua and Yannick Bolasie, because it takes a lot of strength and love for your country to represent them on the international stage, especially when sometimes the conditions are not the best. On that note, it's pretty noteworthy to mention that some of the most talented football players in the world today are in fact of Congolese heritage. Romelu Lukaku of Inter Milan, Axel Tuanzebe, Manchester United, Michy Batshuayi, Crystal Palace, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Manchester United, and the list goes on. Is it a far cry to finally see a reversal of international football's African brain drain? Well, I think there's still some hope. But back to how football developed in Zaire and the strategic thinking from the president at the time. Viewed as a dictator by some and a national hero by others, President Mobutu acquired a remarkable wealth that was widely viewed as dirty money. In 1968 alone, Mobutu invested heavily in Congolese club football, improved training facilities, and even sponsored a friendly between the Congolese football team and the Santos team featuring the legendary Pele. Yes, I said it. Pele Santos were bought in by President Mobutu. The dividends from such investments were handsome, very handsome in fact, for those responsible for Congolese football. In 1968, the Leopards had won the African Cup of Nations in Ethiopia.
Le capitaine de l'équipe fit hommage du triomphe d'Addis Abeba au président Mobutu, promoteur de l'équipe nationale qui l'a mené à la suprême victoire. Le chef de l'État remit alors la médaille d'or du mérite sportif à chacun des léopards, portant fièrement la toque d'honneur qui leur a été octroyée. Distinction bien méritée, remise par le plus grand sportif de notre grand Congo.
And coupled with the Leopard success, Congolese club teams won the African Champions Cup in 1969 and 1970. As Congo's economic and Mobutu's political situation began to improve, Mobutu used sport much more dynamically in the early 1970s. Mobutu, now sitting on vast sums of wealth and having effectively removed any semblance of equality in Congolese politics, renamed Congo to Zaire and began to invest even more of the state's money in the state's football team. After Morocco's World Cup stint in 1970, Mobutu splashed out and bought Yugoslav coach Blagos Vidinic, the man responsible for Morocco's World Cup exploits, to manage the Leopards. Vidinic began to train his team vigorously with an eye on the 1974 World Cup in West Germany. Mobutu flew the team around the world for training and exhibitions. The Leopards were hungry for success. They were ready to be tested, and their first major test under Vidinic came in 1973 in their qualifying group containing Zambia and Vidinic's former team Morocco.
Égalisation donc par le Zaïre, par Daï qui marque donc son 6e but dans ce tournoi. Là, j'ai l'impression que la défense zambienne est un peu restée figée sur cette action.
Of the 3 teams, only one could qualify for the World Cup. Few thought the Leopards would qualify. Morocco had started the African qualifiers for the 1974 tournament as heavy favourites, having qualified for the FIFA World Cup at Mexico in 1970. Morocco had effortlessly moved through the knockout stages to be paired with Zaire and Zambia in a final group competition to fight it out for a single place in West Germany. Yet, having been beaten by Zambia 4-0 in their opening game and only defeating Zambia 2-0 in a return game, Morocco travelled to Kinshasa needing a win to deny Zaire qualification to the World Cup. The Leopards had all the incentive to win, but both teams stood on 4 points. The stage was set. On the day of the match, an estimated 20,000 people crammed into Kinshasa Stadium to watch the teams battle it out. This would determine if Mobutu's investment would come to naught or would the Leopards prevail. Zaire started the match frantically probing the Moroccan defence, looking for an early goal. When this goal was not forthcoming, Morocco's conservative tactics began to frustrate Zaire. By half-time, no progress had been made, and Zaire's frustration was evident as the crunching tackles rained down on the North Africans, urged on by an increasingly desperate home crowd. Morocco's key midfielder Ahmed Faras was the most on the end of this treatment and unable to complete the game. Yet shortly after half-time, Zairean pressure paid off in a controversial goal-mouth scramble. Uba Kembo had bundled the ball over the line for Zaire's first goal of the match. Moroccan goalkeeper Ahmed Belkhoutri pleaded with the Ghanaian referee that he had been illegally stripped of the ball, but his protests were waved away. The Moroccans were shell-shocked. Amazingly, just 3 minutes later, Kembo had doubled Zaire's lead, setting off wild celebrations among his countrymen. Not content with a mere 2-goal margin, Zaire continued to probe for more. Sensing their opponent's demoralisation, Zaire struck once more. Zaire 3, Morocco 0. Job done. Zaire had qualified for the FIFA World Cup finals, the first African country from south of the Sahara to make it to the big show. Morocco couldn't believe it, demanding the match be replayed due to the controversial goal and rough treatment they received. FIFA turned down Morocco and their appeal, resulting in Morocco pulling out of the last group game against Zaire. FIFA awarded them the match 2-0 to Zaire. Zaire had achieved a 100% record in qualification, but more importantly, they had made it to the World Cup. Mobutu provided each player with a car, a house, and 2 weeks vacation. At a time when many Zaireans were struggling to survive, Mobutu continued to dole out rewards to the Leopards as long as they won. Confidence was high leading into the finals in West Germany, but Zaire would soon be rocked by 3 resounding defeats. Thank you for listening, and I hope you'll be here to catch up on the next episode.